Hello, Children's Church. Welcome back to another week. I'm excited about our lesson today. First, I want to announce the winner of this week's drawing. This week, the winner was Leo Ryder. So, Leo, congratulations. You will be getting a gift card from Pastor Mike. You guys are doing a great job watching the videos and answering the questions and getting those to Pastor Mike. So, make sure you keep up the great work. So we're going to jump right into our story about Elaine and find out what happens this week. So Elaine started listening more attentively during the Bible lessons that Mr. Owen would have. She was listening, hoping she could find out more about this verse she had heard, fullness of joy. She wanted so badly to hear more about it, but she was too proud to ask. She would not ask. And after the Bible lesson that day, everyone went around the table and took turns praying, and they skipped right over Elaine. And in their minds, they probably thought Elaine didn't want to pray, but Elaine was very upset by that. She thought, they think they're smarter than me. Excuse me. They think they're smarter than me, and I'm going to pray next time. Even if I don't even mean what I pray, I'm going to pray. I'll show them. And that was Elaine's heart about praying. Also, after Bible time and praying on Sundays, they would go around the table, and they would each share something exciting that happened in their life that week. So Peter and Janet, they decided to share something first. They said, we really want to share about something that happened with the lamb. So they began telling how Peter and Janet went to a neighbor's house who has a farm. And when they got there, one of the farmer's sheep had just had 2 baby lambs. And when they got there, one of the little lambs died. And so the little sheep, the lamb, they only had 1 lamb left. And the farmer was telling them that just the day before, one of their sheep had passed away that had had a baby. So now they had a baby from yesterday that didn't have a mommy left. And then they also had a mommy who had 2 sheep, but 1 died. So what farmers will do is they'll take the sheep that died, and they'll take the skin and the wool off of the sheep, and they'll lay it over top of the baby sheep, and that will trick the mommy into thinking that that's her sheep, because she'll smell the sheep and she'll smell her baby on the sheep. But really it's just her baby's skin, and it's a different sheep. And a lot of times that will trick the mommy into thinking that that is her sheep, and she'll let that baby nurse, and she'll treat that baby like it's hers. And if it doesn't work, the mommy won't be tricked, and then the little lamb won't be able to nurse on that mommy, and they'll have to bottle feed it or find some other way to take care of it. So they thought it was so neat how they could do that. They could take the skin of the lamb and they could put it on the sheep and try to trick the mommy. So the farmer did that. He put the skin on the sheep, and they brought the little lamb in with the other new baby and mommy. And the mommy was accepting, but you know who wasn't? The other little lamb. The little lamb knew that that was not his brother or sister, and so he kept taking his head and hitting the other lamb. He was butting the other lamb with his head, trying to get it to get away from his mom. He did not want to share his milk. And Peter and Janet thought that was so sad. And they said, a couple days later, we went back to the farm to check on the lamb, and we found that not only was the lamb doing well, and they were both nursing together, but sometimes the new lamb would headbutt the other lamb, and almost like they were playing together. And all the people at the table started laughing. Even Elaine laughed. It was just so cute to hear this story about this sweet little lamb and how it was doing. And Mrs. Owen quickly spoke up and she said, that story reminds me a little bit of Christians and how people can be. And they sat there and they thought, what? How does that remind you of people, Mom? And Mrs. Owen shared how sometimes as Christians, we can pretend that we're Christians. We can say the right things and do the right things to try to get people to think that we're believers when we really aren't. And sometimes when people try to correct us or guide us, we can butt heads with them, can't we? We can butt them with our head and try to get them to leave us alone and let us do what we want to do. And just like that little sheep, that little lamb had the wool of the other lamb on it to disguise it. We sometimes can do that when we aren't really believers. And Elaine sat there listening, and she thought, you know what? I was going to pray. Even though I didn't mean anything I said, I was going to pray just so they would think that I was a believer. And she realized that that was her, that she really didn't know God. And so after Janet and Peter shared their story, it was little Frances's turn. And Frances was a little girl, and she was just a tiny thing. And she decided she wanted to share her story from Sunday school. So she stands up and she says, there was a man named Cain and a man named Mabel. And Cain brought his own offering of vegetables, and Mabel brought another sacrifice, and Cain got mad at Mabel and he pushed him hard down and he died. And sometimes when little kids are telling stories and they're telling it wrong and they're using cute words, it's so cute and you just want to laugh so hard, but you try not to laugh because you don't want to embarrass them and you love them so much. Well, that's what was happening. They were listening to this story and she was getting things a little off, and it wasn't Cain and Mabel, it was Cain and Abel, and they just listened and they said, oh, wow, what a great lesson you had in Sunday school, Frances. And after her story, Janet went up to Frances and gave her a little hug and said, Frances, your story needs just a little work. She said, maybe tonight before bed, I can tell you the story again, and we can try to get the story straight for you. And Janet was a good, sweet sister to her little sister, Frances. So that night, they went to go to bed. And again, Elaine laid in bed and she pretended like she was asleep as she watched Janet get ready for bed. And she watched Janet kneel next to her bed and have her Bible time and have her prayer time. And she just watched. Well, then Janet turned the light out and went to bed. And for some reason, it was easier for Elaine to talk to Janet in the dark. So while the lights were off, Elaine looked at Janet, or Elaine called across the room and said, Janet, I have a question for you. And she said, can you tell me about a verse in the Bible that says fullness of joy? And Janet said, what do you mean? And she said, well, I heard a verse. It said, in something is fullness of joy. She said, I don't know what that something is. I couldn't read it. And Janet was a little bit surprised that Elaine was asking about the Bible. And honestly, Janet didn't really know 100% what verse Elaine was talking about. And so she said, I'm not really sure, but I think it's something like in heaven is fullness of joy. And that's what she told her. And then she said, can you tell me what you meant when you said to Frances that her story needed a little work? And because Elaine had never heard the actual story of Cain and Abel, so she didn't know what was wrong. So so Janet started telling Elaine that the story was really about Cain and Abel, not Mabel, and how Cain wanted to bring his own kind of sacrifice. It wasn't the kind that God had instructed them, and that Cain ended up getting angry and he killed his brother, and he became the first murderer in the world. And Janet continued to explain to Elaine that we cannot live in our own accord. We cannot do the things that we want to do. We need to follow what God tells us to do. And after they started talking and finished, Janet drifted off to sleep. But Elaine lay there all night long, and she just kept thinking about the story of Cain and Abel, and she started thinking about the illustration with the lamb, and she realized that there was so much she did not know. She started to really look forward to family devotion time, because not only did she want to hear more about this fullness of joy, but there was so much from the Bible she didn't know. And Elaine started to get this desire to learn and know more. Well, next week when we come back, we're going to talk more about this secret garden that Elaine has found. And we're going to learn more about what happens. Elaine has a long way to go. She has a lot of lessons to learn. And next week she does something very wrong that she doesn't even realize is wrong. But she's going to learn very quickly what she's done wrong. And I'm excited to come back next week and tell you guys more about our lesson. So make sure that you answer the questions at the bottom. Get them to Pastor Mike, and we'll do another drawing next week. And I'll see you guys next week.